Okay, we'll keep reading the 13th reality. We're up to the chapter called A Most Unwelcome Patch of Smoke. The next Saturday afternoon, still in the bliss of Thanksgiving holiday and full from leftover turkey sandwiches, Tick sat in the front room staring out the window at the falling snow. His family lived in a heavily wooded area, and the east side of the state of Washington made for lots of snow in the wintertime. Many people in town grumbled about it, but Tick never did. He loved the cold, he loved the snow, and he loved what came with it. Thanksgiving, then the Christmas holiday, then the football playoffs, then the annual Jackson County chess tournament, where he'd won his age bracket 3 years straight. But even more than any of that, Tick loved the look of the cold white powder resting in soft clumps on the dozens of evergreen trees outside his house. He heard a rumble coming down the street and saw the mailman's van slugging through the thick snow with chained tires. Tick watched as it pulled up to their mailbox. He saw the mailman reach out and put a stack of letters inside. A flash of yellow in the bunch made Tick's heart jump start for a super second. He leaned forwards for a better view, but it was too late. The van lumbered away, sending twin sprays of snow shooting out behind the tires. Tick jumped up from the couch and ran to the front door, where he quickly put on his coat and snow boots. The rest of his family seemed busy with their own things, so no one noticed his nervous reaction to seeing the golden piece of mail. It had been a full week since receiving the letter from Alaska, and he'd thought seriously of burning it every single day. He knew the weird thing in his closet had to be related to the very frightening things he'd been warned about. It seemed so simple to throw the letter into the fire to make sure nothing else happened. But the part of Tick that loved chess and brain teasers and science desperately wanted to see what the 12 clues were all about. So he hadn't burned the letter, and the week had dragged on worse than the one right before Christmas. And now it looked like his choice not to burn the letter may have paid off. He trudged his way through a few inches of snow to the mailbox. His dad had cleared everything with the blower earlier that morning, grumbling about how early winter had set in this year. But now Tick could barely tell he'd done anything at all. The storm was one of those that just kept on coming. The world lay bathed in white, a wintry wonderland that Tick knew would put even the Scroogiest Scrooge in the holiday spirit. He reached the brick mailbox and opened it up, pulling out the stack left moments earlier. He shuffled through the stack, taking each piece off the top and placing it on the bottom. A J.C. Penney catalogue, a power bill, an early Christmas card from Aunt Liz, junk mail, junk mail, junk mail. And then there it was, the envelope, crinkled and golden, with Tick's name and address written messily in blue ink across the front. No return address, the stamp an exotic temple perched high on a mountain. As promised, his next message had arrived, and this time it was postmarked from Kitami, Japan. Tick couldn't believe his luck. No one had to know about this second letter. Something inside of him still itched to tell his parents, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. Not until he knew more, understood more, not until he figured out the puzzle. With a crazy mix of excitement and panic, he locked the door to his room and sat on the bed, the yellow envelope in his sweaty hands. He paused, considering the creepy thing from his closet one last time. He could stop, burn both letters, and never look back. Yeah, right. Tick tore open the letter. He pulled out a single piece of the same white cardstock that had been used the first time, though this time it was only about half the size of the first one. As before, one side was blank, while the other contained a typed message. Mark your calendar, 1 week from the day before the day after yesterday, that comes 3 weeks before 6 months from 3 weeks. From now, minus 49 days plus 5 tomorrows and the next week, it will happen. A day that could very well change the course of your life as you know it. I must say, I hope to see you there. Scribbled directly below that the last line with the initials MG and a note that said, "This is clue 1 of 12. Tick sat back against the wall, his head swimming in confusion and awe. He no longer doubted the messages represented a very serious matter, clues to something extremely important. He was sure the phrase in the first letter that said many lives were at stake wasn't a joke, and it scared him. No matter the source, Tick knew he had to get to the bottom of it. And he felt an overwhelming itch to figure out the first clue. He looked over at his calendar and started running through the words of the message, trying to mentally pinpoint the special day it referred to. But his mind kept spinning in too many directions for him to think straight. Let's see. 1 week from today, 6 weeks before, 6 months, 149 days. Shaking his head, Tick grabbed the first letter from MG, folded it up with the second, then stuffed them both into the back pocket of his jeans and ran downstairs. It was time to get serious. First things first. "Mum, I'm running over to the library," he yelled as he quickly put on his coat and gloves. He was out of the door before she could respond. By the time Tick left his neighbourhood, the snow had let up, the air around him brightening as the sun fought its way through the thinning clouds. Deer Park was a small town, and since the city centre was only a couple of miles from Tick's house, he walked there all the time. And, being a bookworm and study bug, the library often ended up as Tick's destination of choice, especially when he wanted to use the internet. His family had it at home, but it wasn't as fast as at the library. And Kayla always seemed to want to play with her Winnie the Pooh game the second he sat down at the computer, bugging him until he gave in. He walked across the town square where, during the summer, a huge fountain usually sprayed. Now the square lay as a flat expanse of whiteness, countless footsteps in the snow crisscrossing it as people bustled around the town. The library was one of the oldest buildings around, a grey bundle of granite built decades ago. To get there, Tick always took a shortcut between the fire station and the pharmacy, a thin alley the width of his shoulders. The stone walls that towered over him as he walked along the alley made him think of old medieval castles. He had almost reached the end of the alley when a quick breeze whipped past his left ear, followed by an eerie, haunting moan that rose up behind him like the last call of a lonely ghost before heading back to its grave. Tick spun around, stumbling backwards when he saw what was there. A swirling, rippling cloud of grey smoke floated in the alley, surging and receding, billowing out, then shrinking back again every 2 or 3 seconds, like it was breathing. And then the smoke turned into a face. The wispy smoke coalesced and hardened, forming into unmistakable facial features: dark eyes under bushy grey eyebrows, a crooked nose with black gaping holes for nostrils, thin lips pulled back into a wicked grin, exposing an abyss of a mouth with no teeth, wild, unkempt hair and a beard. Tick willed himself to move, but he could only stare in amazement at the impossible thing floating in front of him. The moaning sound returned, a deep low groan filled with grief and pain. It came from every direction, amplified by the narrow stone walls growing louder and creepier. Tick felt goosebumps break out all over him, chills washing his skin in waves. "What? Who are you?" he asked, amazed that he had found the courage to speak. Instead of answering, the smoky face groaned louder, its eyes flaring wider. Then it lunged towards Tick, who turned and ran for his life. The Lady in the Trees.
La 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 la.
Tick shot out of the alley at a full run and slammed into a man walking past, both of them tumbling to the ground in a chaotic jumble of arms and legs. I'm sorry, Tick yelled, helping the man to his feet as he looked back at the alley, expecting the smoky apparition to appear. But nothing came out, and the creepy sound had stopped completely. It's okay, the man replied as he brushed himself off. What's the rush? Tick finally focused on the man he tackled and saw it was Mr. Wilkinson, the school custodian. Oh, just going to the library, sorry. Tick took 3 hesitant steps so he could see clearly down the alley. It was empty, no sign of a spooky ghost face anywhere. Well, gotta run. Don't want to waste any study time. Not waiting for an answer, Tick took off for the old library building, wondering if somehow Mr. Wilkinson had saved him from a terrible fate. 5 minutes later, Tick stood doubled over in the lobby of the library, hands on his knees, gasping like each breath might be his last. Even though the thing in the alley had disappeared and not chased him, Tick had run as hard as he could until he was safe inside the musty-smelling entrance of the old building. Maybe I am imagining things, he thought. There's no way I just saw what I think I saw. The librarian behind the desk gave him an evil stare as Tick caught his breath. If he'd been in a better mood, he would have laughed at how she'd fulfilled every cliche in the book. Hair up in a bun, glasses perched on the tip of her nose with a linked chain drooping around her neck, beady eyes that told small children they'd never reach adulthood if they didn't read 30 books a day. This librarian must be new. The rest of the staff knew him like a mother knew her own kids. He spotted Miss Sears over by the non-fiction section and quickly walked towards the computers, trying to avoid her. The last thing he needed right now was some nice chit-chat about the weather. She saw him anyway. "Hi there, Tick," she called out to him, her beaming smile managing to calm his nerves a bit. Miss Sears had grey, tightly curled hair that looked like a cleaning pad permanently glued atop her freckled head. "What are you up to today? Here to study up on your chess strategy? Or maybe look for a pen pal?" Tick shook his head, trying to dislodge the heavy feeling that clung to his bones, like an oily sludge. "Nah, I just wanted to poke around on the internet. Got a little boring over at my house." "Your dad didn't break out the karaoke set again, did he? If so, I hope all your windows were closed." She gave him a wink. "No, I think he finally figured out he sounds like a wounded goat when he sings." He knew his voice sounded tight and he hoped Miss Sears didn't notice. So many questions bounced around inside his head and he felt like he'd need surgery to relieve the swelling. "Oh, Tick, you better hope I don't tell your father you just said that," she replied. "By the way, I hear you're no match for him in that silly football video game." Tick forced a laugh. "How in the world did you know that?" "Small town, kiddo, small town." "Yeah, guess so." An awkward silence followed as he shrugged his shoulders. "Well, I better get to a computer. Have fun. Let me know if you need any help." She turned and pushed her book cart down another aisle. Relieved, Tick jogged to a long row of computer desks and found an empty one, glad to sit down and rest. As he pulled out his library card, he nervously glanced around, though he had no idea what he was looking for. "Getting a little paranoid, aren't you?" he chided himself. "There has to be a perfectly reasonable explanation for all of this. Something." He slid the card into the electronic reader, then typed his password when the prompt appeared on the screen. A few seconds later, a window opened for him, connecting him to the internet. Peeking around the library stacks like a top-level CIA agent searching for spies, Tick pulled out the 2 mystery letters and unfolded them, pressing them flat on the desk next to the keyboard. He read through them both again, even though he already knew the first thing he wanted to try on the internet search engine. He hoped other people had received similar letters and were talking about them in blogs or message boards. Holding his breath, witching like crazy he'd find something useful, Tick typed MG and clicked search. An instant later, the computer screen told him how many hits: 2,333,117. Great. Websites about MG Cars, Madagascar Magnesium, MG Financial Group were listed, but nothing that gave any kind of hint about who had sent the 2 letters. He tried other phrases: frightening things, despicably deadly, 49 plus 5 tomorrows. Nothing useful popped up. Discouraged, he sat back and stared at the screen. He'd been afraid to admit how much he really wanted there to be others like him. He didn't want to be alone in this crazy stuff. The first letter had been addressed to Dear Master Atticus, but the wording of the message made Tick think more than one letter had been sent out, a plea for help from anyone willing to give it. Well, Maybe he'd have to be the first one to put some clues out there for other people to find. Rejuvenated by the thought, he typed in the address for the Pen Pal site, then logged into his own section and personal profile. He briefly described the situation, listed some of the key phrases from both letters, then asked if anyone out there had received something similar. He clicked submit and sat back in the chair again, folding his arms. Hopefully, if anyone else in the world searched for the same thing as he'd just done, they would somehow get linked up with his Pen Pal information and email him. It was a start. The snow had started up again, big fluffy flakes swirling in the wind. Tick pulled his red and black scarf up around his ears and mouth as he left the library and headed for home. He walked in the opposite direction from where he'd come earlier, perfectly willing to take the long way around in order to avoid the haunted alleyway. He shivered, not sure if it was from the cold weather or the memory of the spooky smoke ghost. He walked all the way around the downtown area, doing his best to stay in the most public of places. The sky had melted into a dull grey. Flakes of white dancing around him like a shaken snow globe. Maybe that's where I am, he thought. I've been sucked from the real world and placed in some alien's giant coffee table knick-knack. A shot of relief splashed through his nerves when he finally made it to the small section of forest that lined the road to his neighbourhood. All he wanted was to go home and warm up, maybe play his dad in Football 3000. From the corner of his eye, Tick saw something move in the trees just to the left of the road. Something huge, like a moose or a bear. He turned and looked more intently, curious. Though he lived in a small town, big animals rarely ventured into the woods this close to his neighbourhood. Just a few feet away from him, a shadow loomed behind a thick tree frosted with snow. Its owner, obviously trying to hide from him. Animals don't hide, Tick thought, warning alarms clanging in his mind as he readied himself to run. But then the thing stepped out from behind the tree and Tick's feet froze to the ground. Despite its enormous size and odd appearance, it wasn't an it at all. It was a person, a lady, and she was 8 feet tall.